Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And another heavyweight news or notes mashup video today, starting with the WBC, which has reaffirmed its expectations for 2023 in terms of its different divisions and fighters. We're concerned with the heavyweight division, so we'll get down to that. So it says that Tyson Fury will have the option to fight a unification fight against Oleksandr Uysk for the Undisputed Championship. The winner will be committed to fight the WBC mandatory. So there's a couple of points there. One, it's good that they're not going to stand in the way of an undisputed fight. But does that mean they won't allow a rematch because the mandatory will be waiting? And on the mandatory front, as you can see below that statement, that first one, it says Andy Ruiz Jr. to fight Deontay Wilder in a final eliminator for the mandatory position. So is the WBC looking at this as Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Uysk, and then the winner of that fight straight into the winner of Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz Jr.? Sort of seems that way, but I guess it's boxing. There's a lot of shades of grey, and actually what could, will, can, all that sort of stuff happen. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they're saying this now, but it could end up being a case of the undisputed fight ends up being two fights, because let's face it, that's just what happens with these big fights these days. You have titles tied up with rematches for a full year. Laughable in some respects. So, yeah, at least though, we've got some certainty. Wilder and Ruiz, they're reaffirming, yes, that is going to happen. Deontay Wilder had said in his management that he was keen to maybe go straight into an Anthony Joshua fight or into another fight. Andy Ruiz Jr., though, is like pretty keen to get Deontay Wilder, and I like that fight. And I think Deontay Wilder, if he wins it, he will wait and he will want the winner of Undisputed. But there will be plenty of takers considering Oleksandr Usyk's 3 belts. There will be mandatories due there as well. SES Boxing has announced that Agit Kabayel and Argon Smakici, which had been due to be at the end of January, has now been rescheduled till March the 4th. And that's because Agit Kabayel has the flu. So it says in the press release, the European Championship fight of SES heavyweight Agit Kabayel, and actually I'll just stop there because I didn't realise that this fight was for the EBU title. So yeah, Agit Kabayel once held that, and he dropped it when he was signed a co-promotional deal to fight on top-ranked shows in the United States, but never went there because of the pandemic. But it continues that the fight has to be postponed to March 4, 2023 due to a very severe flu with a training ban of several weeks. The intensive preparation of heavyweight Agit Kabayel had to be abruptly interrupted shortly before the turn of the year. The planned fight date of January 28, especially on the advice of the attending physicians, could no longer be kept. And bear in mind, this is translated, this page, from German, so it's not going to all make 100% reading correctly and sound, like it's fluid. Now, SES heavyweight Agit Kabayel will make his first appearance in his hometown of Bochum with the fight for the vacant European heavyweight title against Croatian Argon Smakici, March 4 at the same place in Bochum's Ruhr Congress Halle. Attention, tickets, blah, blah, blah. So bad news for Agit Kabayel, because this was looking like a year where he might fight more than once. He's been on a run of one fight a year for 5 years, and starting with a fight in January gave at least me some optimism he might be back in the ring sometime in 2023 for a second fight. Now that it's pushed out a couple of months, well, I guess all bets are off on that front. It is Agit Kabayel after all. He's going to have this fight, and he is the favourite. I think he's going to get some rounds against Smakici, but I think he is going to beat him. Smakici is a decent heavyweight, but I think Agit Kabayel, with his skill set, he is a cut above. Although with the inactivity, certainly not a good sign. And Smakici coming into this one with some form, having stopped Lenroy Thomas in impressive fashion. He can punch, but Kabayel can box and move, and will probably canter to a decision. And actually, he probably needs the round given all the inactivity. Last seen in 2022 in a hastily arranged fight to keep his ranking against Pavel Saurin, blasted him out in a round, dropping him, 3 or 4 times. So Agit Kabayel, Argon Smakici, March the 4th. Demsey Mckean has spoken about potentially fighting Anthony Joshua, and that has been discussed with Eddie Hearn. But Eddie Hearn does have some reservations at this point in time. So I'll let Mckean just briefly sum up why.
I think from a business side of view, like Eddie said, I think I have to beat a reputable name first to be able to land a big fight like that in a stadium fight, which is, I can completely understand, obviously, business side of things and marketing.
The Canadian heavyweight Simon Kean has again called out Tony Yoka, and this is not for the first time. He's done it multiple times. Kean had been due to fight in December on the Arslanbek Makhmedov undercard versus Eric Molina, but a back injury forced him out in late November. So he had a good fight with Shaundell Winters last year. Actually, Winters floored him. Kean, who is so vulnerable, he's kind of like a David Price type character. You never really know what's going to happen. He can bang, but also he's a bit of a glass cannon as well. If he was actually to face Yoka, who hasn't been back in the ring since getting absolutely beaten up by Martin Bakole in 2022, I think that is actually a pretty decent comeback opponent for Yoka to get some confidence, because I think Yoka would absolutely dog walk it and would stop Simon Kean. So I don't mind that fight at all for Tony Yoka. I think it's all wrong for Simon Kean, and I think he would get knocked out. But perhaps he knows that where he's at in his career, that option with Yoka and utilising the sort of French angle, with Kean being from the French-speaking part of Canada, that they could maybe utilise that, build on that, and sort of make it France versus Quebec, all that sort of stuff. But I think Kean ultimately gets blasted out of there. Not bad for Yoka, and I think actually they should consider that. Stefan Shaw, who faces F.A. Ajagba on January 14th, says, "We are ready for war. Let's get it on. 9 days until I reign supreme," live on ESPN at Turning Stone in Verona, New York, and a dozen or so or more hashtags. And really, that's a big fight for Stefan Shaw. He's been grafting away for the best part of a decade. He's only got about 18 fights on his ledger. He's been largely underpromoted, largely inactive, and not in the right fights at the right time. And this recent link up with ESPN and Top Rank on a co-promotional basis provides him a bit of a platform, and this could be his breakout fight. So it's a huge night on January 14 for Stefan Shaw, and if he was ever going to be ready, it's got to be for this fight to main event, to look good, and he could be onto much bigger and better things if he goes in there and does a number on F.A. Ajagba. But just winning is the main thing. But if he looks impressive in doing so, it could be a huge boon for his career. Meanwhile, circling back to Argon Smakici, I put this in the wrong order. So he's currently sparring with fellow Croatian Alen Babic as he prepares for war, as he says, with Agit Kabayel. It'll just be a little bit down the line in a couple of months' time instead of in 3.5 weeks. So he may have to just taper off a little bit and reset, because he doesn't want to sort of overtrain for a March fight with Kabayel. And Kevin Lerna, he looks like he is going to be leaving heavyweight for the time being to fight Riyad Merhi in an ordered WBC Bridgerweight fight, which is kind of disappointing news for the heavyweight division. He certainly could. I think he was 230 pounds, roughly there or thereabouts, for the fight with Daniel Dubois. He can probably boil down to 224. He's had teased that there was fight news coming, and with the WBC ordering Alen Babic, sometimes heavyweight, against Lukas Rozanski, also a sometime heavyweight, and you've got Kevin Lerna in the mix there against Riyad Merhi, and this is all after Oscar Rivas, also a sometime heavyweight, has had a detached retina issue. He is injured, he's out of boxing for a while, and the WBC vacated that Bridgerweight title, so you've seemingly got a bit of a box off going there. And Jonathan Guidry, Bermane Stiverne, so the official promo poster is now out in all its glory. So seemingly put together in paint or 3D paint, something like that. The Don King Productions presents Let Freedom Ring for the Ukraine, Clash of the Champions. So Guidry holds a NABA gold title. Bermane Stiverne, previous WBC champion, hasn't had a win in 7 years. Look at the poster in all its glory. And I hadn't believed that this card was actually happening until something popped up on Don King's website today, because there had been talk of this fight, and it was an account on Twitter where I'd seen it in December. It only had a couple of hundred followers, and someone said, no, that's Don King Productions' account. And I couldn't really sort of believe it until something popped up here. But no, there is a card happening, headlined by Guidry and Stiverne on the 21st of January. And now there is some news up on Don King's website, including that it'll be $19.99 for this pay-per-view event. Make of that what you will. Do you really want to drop your money on that? I run a heavyweight boxing channel, so I might be forced to. But if you're on Don King's website, you can also peruse the letter that he wrote to Jeff Bezos. Make of that what you will. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.